Most people think dealing with stupid people is exhausting because they don't understand, but that's not the real reason. The real reason it feels exhausting is because you expect logic, you expect awareness, you expect them to see what is obvious to you, and when they don't, you try harder, you explain more, you argue better, you put more energy into being understood, and slowly, without realizing it, you start losing control. Because the more you try to force understanding, the more resistance you create, and resistance is exactly what keeps the cycle alive. There was a period in my life where I thought intelligence meant having the right answers, being able to break things down, to explain and to convince. But every time I tried to do that with the wrong people, it led to the same result. It led to frustration, endless arguments, and no real outcome. And what made it worse was that they always seemed so certain, so confident, and so unshaken, even when they were clearly wrong, and that's when it starts getting to you. You begin questioning yourself, wondering how someone can be so sure while being so incorrect. But the answer is simple. The answer is confidence. Confidence doesn't come from intelligence. It comes from the absence of doubt. And some people never doubt themselves, not because they are right, but because they don't think deeply enough to question it. And once you understand that, something shifts. You stop trying to match their confidence. You stop trying to prove them wrong. And you start seeing the situation for what it really is. Not a conversation, but a pattern. A predictable loop of behavior. They speak, you react. They push, you respond. And the cycle repeats. But what happens when you break that cycle? What happens when you don't react? At first, nothing changes. They keep talking, keep repeating themselves, keep pushing for a reaction, because that's what they're used to. That's how they measure control, through your response. But when the response doesn't come, something strange happens. They lose rhythm. They start feeling the silence. They start trying harder, and they start speaking more. And the more they speak, the more they review. Not just what they think, but how they think. And that's where the real understanding begins. You start noticing the shortcuts in their thinking, the assumptions and the emotional triggers. You see where logic disappears and ego takes over. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. And that changes the way you respond, or more accurately, the way you don't. Because intelligent people don't deal with stupid people by overpowering them. They deal with them by removing the game entirely. They stop arguing, they don't compete, and they don't try to dominate the conversation. They step outside of it, and from that position, everything looks different. You're no longer emotionally involved, no longer trying to win. You're observing by staying calm, detached, and aware. And that awareness is where the control comes from. Because once you're not reacting, you can choose your response. And sometimes the most powerful response is not responding at all. There's a kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable. Not because it's loud, but because it reflects them back to themselves. And most people aren't ready for that. They need noise, distraction, and a reaction from you. Because without it, they are left alone with their own thoughts. And that's not a place everyone is comfortable being in. That's why they start talking more. They start pushing you more. And they are trying harder to get something from you. But if you stay still and if you stay calm, they eventually run out of momentum. And when they do, all that is left is clarity. You see exactly who they are. You see exactly how they think. And you see exactly what drives them. And once you see that, you stop taking it personally. You stop feeling frustrated. You stop expecting something different, because now you understand this is who they are, and they are not going to change just because you want them to. The realization is where most people either grow or get stuck, because it forces you to make a choice. Keep engaging and stay in the cycle, or just step away and keep control. Intelligent people make that choice quickly. They don't waste time trying to fix what isn't fixable. They don't invest energy where it won't return. They understand boundaries, not loud ones, not aggressive ones, quiet boundaries, the kind that don't need explanation. They simply limit access. They limit access to their time, to their attention, and their energy. And that's something most people don't realize. Your attention is a resource, and where you place it determines what grows in your life. If you give it to chaos, you get more chaos. If you give it to conflict, you get more conflict. But If you start pulling it back, things begin to change. You become more selective, more intentional, and suddenly you're not surrounded by the same noise anymore because you're no longer feeding it. And that's the real difference. Not intelligence in the traditional sense, but awareness. Awareness of what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Because at the end of the day, dealing with stupid people isn't about them. It never was. It's about you. It's about your reactions, your expectations, and your control. And the moment you understand that, everything becomes simpler. You stop trying to win, you stop trying to prove, and you stop trying to change people. And instead, you start choosing. Choosing where to engage, choosing when to speak, choosing when to walk away. And that choice is what separates intelligence from noise. Because real intelligence isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't need to be proven. It moves differently, quietly, precisely, without wasting any energy. And once you start moving like that, you realize something most people never will. You were never stuck dealing with them, you were just choosing to stay in the conversation. And the moment you stop choosing that, you are free. Not because they changed, but because you did.